Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report, and we're going to get into some potential trade targets that Antonio Pierce and Tom Telesco could look at. We got our chat sports team at the NFL Combine, and since they are at the Combine, there's a lot of rumors, there's a lot of buzz, and there are certain players that our team has kind of put together a list, and they have sent to me of, hey, these are some potential trade targets, or I guess trade candidates on other NFL teams. I took that list that I was sent, and then I went ahead and I said, all right, this guy would make sense. That guy makes some sense. So I did this based on what the Raiders currently need at certain positions and based off of what our chat sports team is hearing at the NFL Combine right now. I do also have to say that not every single player that you see on the show means that I want the Raiders to trade for him. I will say this, though. If the Raiders make any deal, any trade whatsoever, we're going to be live here on the Raiders Report. I'll give you my honest feedback on it. I'll tell you whether I like the trade, whether I don't like the trade. And anytime we go live, I want people to tune in. Yes, we go live every single Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. But my favorite live shows, minus when McDaniels got fired, are when Raiders make a trade, Raiders sign a player in free agency, and I think a lot of that fun stuff's coming up here. So subscribe, turn on those notifications. That way you don't miss a thing. Let's go to the first potential Raiders trade target here. Rolling in, it's Kenyon Green, offensive guard for the Houston Texans. He's a former first-round pick in 2022. The problem is he's just been battling a lot of injuries, and he got injured before this previous season. The Texans also drafted Drew Scruggs out of Penn State in 2023, and he's probably going to end up beating out Green, which that puts Green in this interesting situation of, well, if you're drafted in round one, you're expected to start. Like, I'm not going to say that Kenyon Green reminds me of Alex Leather because I think that Green's a much more talented player, but it's kind of like that situation where, here's the thing, you got a brand new head coach. This head coach has no ties to Kenyon Green, right? D'Amico Ryans didn't end up drafting him. So because of that, he's now on the back burner. And if they have a guy that's potentially better, then that's the route that they're more than likely going to go. And if you can get somebody that was drafted in round one, potentially in the fourth round's a little too rich for my blood here. Like, if I'm going to make an offer, I know he's been battling some injuries. I'm going to make an offer for a fifth, a sixth, or seventh round pick for most of these players for the simple fact of, right before free agency, I'm not going to trade you some picks. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to get the cheapest deal that I possibly can, because if not that they're going to cut him, but I'm still trying to get good value here before free agency and before the NFL draft. I'll be real, though. He's a big boy, could potentially be a starting guard if he's healthy. Like, I would like to see what Green looks like in a little bit of a different scenario, if you will, because he is a powerful blocker. But, like, these PFF grades from 2022 they're bad. Like, there's just no other way that you can possibly say it. They are bad. An overall grade of 37.7, pass blocking grade of 27.0, run blocking grade of 47.4. I do believe, though, that there's opportunities at times to buy low on certain guys, and the reason why I'd be intrigued to buy low on him is because there's a part of me that thinks just because the Houston Texans are a better run team and just because D'Amico Ryans has a good head on his shoulders, that guess what? The Texans aren't going to be the shit show that they used to, and Kenyon Green's going to have a better season, and you have the opportunity to finally buy low. Then when you look at the Raiders' offensive line depth chart, you're not going to be able to go out and sign all of these big-name free agents, and as it stands right now, the Silver and Black are missing 3 out of their starting offensive linemen. Based off of some reports that I've heard at the Combine, the Raiders are trying to bring back Greg Van Roten. However, they want to bring him back as kind of like the role Jordan Meredith played this past season, where he's just more of a depth piece. And if they decide to kick Dylan Parham in at center, could you go out, trade for Kenyon Green, give up a fifth-round pick, and then all you have to do is you're only going to have to owe him $2.2 million this season, and then you would owe him $5.1 million in 2025. Like, if you can find a potential starting offensive guard for those prices in free agency, you're going to take that every single day of the week. I know Kenyon Green was hurt last year. I know that he was bad in 2022, but I do think certain circumstances can change a lot of things, and if you're in a better overall situation now, and the Raiders now are a better situation that he was in on the 2022 Texans, I mean, they picked where they did for a reason. I think it's an intriguing option that the Raiders should at least consider out there. However, I do want to know what y'all have to say. Like, if the Raiders were going to make one trade this offseason, Let me know down below who you think it should be for. And I know it's a very difficult conversation to have, and there's a lot of different types of trades that you can make. And maybe the better way to say this is like, if you could make one trade before free agency, if you could make one trade before the NFL draft, who would it be? There's a lot of different areas there, but the pick that you're going to see from me is me basing it off of finding the right bang for my buck. So if you guys could, go down to the comments section. Let me know if you could make a trade that the Raiders should consider, whether that's Telesco, whether that's Antonio Pierce. If you could, this is going to be the pinned comment on today's show. I want you to scroll on down while you're getting hit with that YouTube ad break. Believe it or not, let the ad play. I know sometimes it takes a little time. Helps out Jeremy and I. So if you could, let the ad play and give me your answer. If you could make one trade before free agency, before the draft, who should it be for the Las Vegas Raiders? Coming up after this YouTube ad break, my answer. Right now, I'm looking for a low-risk trade. I don't want to give up a ton of draft capital for a player that let's face it, if you're getting traded right now, there's a reason why you're getting traded right now. So if I can find a low-risk, potentially a high reward that comes in at a cheap price, that's what I'm looking for. And the player that I'm about to talk about is this guy. And this is a dude that I talked about a lot last year, and I'm going to bring his name up here again because he has been linked, in our guy here at Chat Sports who's at the Combine is very well tied in with Philadelphia, has brought up the name James Bradberry. And I know Bradberry was bad this past season, and realistically, since Bradberry held, maybe he did, maybe he didn't, in the Super Bowl, he has not been a very reliable corner for Philadelphia. However, he does have experience playing with Patrick Graham, and if the Eagles would take next to nothing to get him, because if I can give up one of our 7th-round picks, right now the Las Vegas Raiders have 3 7th-round picks. You use one of those 7s, you go get a guy like James Bradberry, because if not, I actually think Philadelphia is just going to cut him, and if you know that you're going to cut somebody anyway, wouldn't you just rather get something for him in return? All it would do is cost the Raiders $1.2 million in 2024, and he has $0 million guaranteed in 2025. So you give up a 7th-round pick, you add a 31-year-old James Bradberry coming off a bad year, but he does have ties with Patrick Graham, and honestly, the best version of Bradberry was with Patrick Graham with the New York Giants. And if he's bad after 1 year, you cut your ties, you move on, and then there's nothing to worry about. And yes, he was bad, but I also think that it was outblown, or like it was highlighted a lot more how bad he was just because of blown out of proportion because of how the season ended in Philadelphia, right? Like they lost, 8 out of their last 9 games, 7 out of their last 8 games. He was not great. Again, though, 7th-round pick, if I could find a cornerback of the caliber of James Bradberry in the 7th round of the NFL draft, Amik Robertson, free agent. You put Nate Hobbs, Jack Jones. You still got to go out and find another corner. This is more of just finding that reliable veteran that you can bring in here that knows the Patrick Graham defense, like a player coach on the field. That is a role that I do find value in, and if it's not going to cost a lot to get him and the Raiders don't have to pay him a lot of money, all I'm saying is at least entertain the idea. And in fact, a lot of the trades that you're going to see here on today's show are just think about it. Don't just say no right away. I got a few more names to bring up here on the show, but I do want to tell you about our sponsor, Game Time. And Game Time is an awesome app that creates a lot of lasting memories, not only for you, but anybody that you end up taking to a game. Like, I know the Raiders football season's over, but if you want to go to a hockey game, right now, I would say, if you ask me, Mitch, would you rather go to a basketball game or a hockey game? I'm picking hockey every single day of the week, and the Vegas Golden Knights are a really, really fun team to watch. Why? Because they're actually good. But if you're looking for awesome seats, price drops, even when the event gets a little bit closer. And the cool part about Game Time is they are the lowest price guaranteed. So you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code RaidersChat for $20 off your first purchase. Again, check it out. Game Time for last-minute tickets. Use code RaidersChat for $20 off. Game Time gives fans access to last-minute tickets to the most popular events in more than 60 cities across the U.S. and in Canada. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. And with 2-tap buying options, you'll score tickets quickly and without the hassle. Skip all the lines, skip all the hassle, and enjoy the moment. Terms apply again. Create an account. redeem code RaidersChat for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And the other thing is, I've been trying to save up for a wedding, right? Like, I'm just being real with y'all. I've been trying to save up for a wedding. So finding events, finding things to do for under $50 is an awesome option. And if you're a dad, if you're a mom, if you're looking for something fun to do with your child to just get out of the house, the cool part about Game Time is you can find really, really cheap tickets last minute, so you can find something fun and spontaneous, and it's going to create a lasting memory. That's why I love Game Time, and I think you guys will enjoy it too. That link's going to be available to you all down in the comments and down in the description of today's show. Let's go to the next name here on my list of potential Raiders trade targets. It's Patrick Peterson, corner of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Peterson is not getting any younger, and he is not the corner that he once was with the Arizona Cardinals, but he's got 1 year left on his deal, and Pittsburgh, according to a source close to us here at Chat Sports, is likely to cut him if he doesn't take a pay cut this season. So again, if you're Pittsburgh and you go, well, I don't know if he's going to take a pay cut, and we're just going to have to cut him anyway, you might as well just try to get something cheap for him. So again, I'm talking 7th-round pickish here for Peterson. He did play well last year as a safety when Minkah Fitzpatrick went down, and Peterson had to fill that role. Like, I know when you hear Peterson, you think of a corner, and I think of a corner too. But the Raiders and Patrick Graham, they like versatility. So what if you brought in another veteran like Peterson here and let him be this versatile corner safety hybrid type of player? The other intriguing part about this is we always know how the NFL works with relationships. And the Raiders safety coach is now Gerald Alexander, who worked with him. He's been a part of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's been with the Steelers the past 2 seasons. And if the best version that we've seen out of Peterson, probably in the last 2 or 3 years, came out when he played safety, if I'm Patrick, I'm thinking at least like, shit, do I go to Las Vegas? Do I rejoin the guy, a coach that helped me look the best I've looked in a few different years? Sure, it's in a different position, but it could be an opportunity. Like, I think when you consider the idea of going out and adding a veteran, when you go out and you consider adding somebody like this on a brand new team with a brand new head coach, 31 new coaches in general, a brand new GM, you need to be okay with the idea of having those player coaches that can really get your message across to some of these younger players. So when you look at the safeties, like, I know we have Merrick, I know we have Epps. Patrick Peterson ain't better than those two guys, and he's not taking play time away from them. Isaiah Palomeo, I do expect to come back. Chris Smith and Grant, I don't see Grant returning. Chris Smith II is a candidate to me that I do think could potentially get cut. Like, this regime did not draft him, and sure, he was drafted in the 5th round, 170 overall out of Georgia, but that doesn't guarantee you anything. And then even from your cornerback spot here, you got Jack Jones, you got Nate Hobbs, and then there's a lot of other unknowns. The Raiders are going to cut Brandon Facyson. Tyler Hall will be an intriguing player. I'll see where he goes. Sam Webb is basically a fringe practice squad player. Jacorian Bennett was drafted in round 4, but there's not a single person alive right now that reps the silver and black that has confidence in him. So my point is, like, you could trade a 7th-round pick. This is the one problem. It will be $6.9 million in 2024. And I don't view him as an upgrade over Marcus Peters. The Raiders paid Marcus Peters last season $4 million. So with that mindset, like, that could steer you away a little bit more. Like, if I had to pick between James Bradberry or Patrick Peterson, which out of those two players I would trade for, I'd pick James Bradberry every single day of the week. Let's go to the next name here, and this is the big one on the show. It's Brandon Aiyuk. And Aiyuk's family and friends have made it seem like he's going to be leaving the 49ers, and there's been videos on Instagram, on Twitter. People have been saying things like, yeah, like he's out of there. However, according to Chase Sr., who is our rep here for the 49ers, the San Francisco 49ers have no plans of trading him, and they're trying to figure out a long-term deal. Part of the combine is there's a lot of smoke, right? And maybe the 49ers are just trying to convince teams that they want to be able to hang on to him so they get a better trade. But also, like, if his friends, his family are openly saying that Brandon Aiyuk's not going back there, it's not that I don't believe what people are saying at the combine, but call me crazy, I'm going to believe his friends, his family, the people that Brandon's talking to on a regular day basis, the people that he lives with. Like, Aiyuk played at Arizona State. He has those connections with Antonio Pierce. Now, I know the other thing that everybody's sitting up here saying is like, why would the Raiders trade for Aiyuk? We are set at the wide receiver position, which you are 100,000% correct. But the reason why you would potentially do it is if the Raiders move on from Hunter Renfrow. What if the Raiders move on from Jacoby Myers? Could you add Brandon Aiyuk next to Devontae Adams, give him a big-time deal? I mean, another thing that people don't want to like to hear is you get Brandon Aiyuk a big-time deal now, and then you keep Devontae Adams, and then next offseason when Adams' salary goes up to $44.1 million per year, could you potentially then trade Devontae, and now you got a younger Brandon Aiyuk to be your star wide receiver? Like, I can create a picture in my mind where it makes sense. I can also sit up here and give you 10 reasons why it doesn't make any sense for the Raiders to go out and trade for Aiyuk. But if this team's going to operate based on let's go out and get AP his guys, which is kind of one of the things that this team has done, Brandon Aiyuk is one of AP's guys. It's also one of Jaden Daniels' guys as well. So should the Raiders trade for Brandon Aiyuk, type trade, type pass, whether you're watching this live, whether you're watching this on a later date, put on that GM hat, talk with Tom Telesco here. Should the Raiders trade for 49ers wide receiver Brandon Aiyuk? My answer is no. He is a phenomenal receiver. I actually think he's probably one of the most underrated receivers in the National Football League. And I said that last year about Jacoby, where Jacoby's the wide receiver 2 on the Raiders, and he's always going to be overshadowed by Devontae. Brandon Aiyuk might be a better receiver than Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel might be a better football player than Brandon Aiyuk, but Ayuk's always going to be the afterthought there in San Francisco as long as Deebo's there. The other reason why I'm not doing it, though, is because the Raiders have other needs. Like, you're going to have to trade probably a second-round pick at the absolute least. Like, if I'm the Niners, I want a first for Brandon, right? I'm not giving up pick 13 for Aiyuk. I'm not even going to a 2025 first-round pick for Aiyuk. Like, let's say it's pick 44, and then you have to go pay him $14.1 million. Like, $14.1 for Aiyuk, based off his talent right now, is a good deal. But I also see him then, if you make the trade, he's going to want a longer-term deal, a bigger deal overall. It's not a need. If the Raiders were to spend $14.1 million on a receiver, I'd rather you allocate that money to a defensive tackle like a Leonard Williams, like a DJ Reader, or going out and finding a top offensive lineman like a Robert Hunt. Coming up next, I got 2 more potential Raiders trade targets that we've been hearing some buzz around at the NFL Combine. Again, I'm not saying that the Raiders are literally like showing interest in these players. I'm sitting up here telling you that there is buzz, there are rumors around certain dudes at the Combine, and based on the Raiders' needs, could they potentially go out and trade for him? There are a handful of players, though, that I know Las Vegas will not trade for that have been asked about. I probably could have also put Hassan Reddick on this list just because of how much money he's owed. Justin Fields, it's not going to happen. Like, it's not going to happen. Like, the fact that the Raiders hired Luke Getsy, that's number one. It's been reported by almost every Raiders beat reporter out there that the Raiders believe that Fields was the problem, not Getsy. On top of that, I'm a big follower of Vegas Knows. I just saw some latest odds today around Vegas and Fields. Minus 425 to Atlanta. You see odds like that, that to me says that this guy's going to the Atlanta Falcons. Zach Wilson, L'Jarius Sneed. They're not going to trade for a bad quarterback like Wilson. Sneed, there's no reason why you give up 2 first-round picks to go get him. Then you don't have an opportunity to go get your quarterback. They're not going to make a deal with anybody from Denver, even though Denver's selling a lot of pieces. And then the last name is Khalil Mack. The Raiders will not be trading for Khalil Mack this upcoming season. Let's go to the next name here. It's Tyus Bowser, linebacker, edge of the Baltimore Ravens. Another dude that's in the final year of his deal, and he missed all of last season with a knee injury. And honestly, it was kind of a weird knee injury. Like, nobody really knew what the hell happened to him. When you look at the reports and you look at the news around him, there was a lot of undisclosed. Like, we know it was a knee, but it just kind of lingered and lingered and lingered. And when I went back and I looked at some of the reports around Bowser, it kind of reminded me of a few years ago. Remember when Richie Incognito, honestly, even like a Brandon Faison this past year, but Incognito like hurt his ankle in a preseason, and they were like, oh, he'll be back, never ended up getting on the field. Like, remember when Faison like was just not playing? Imagine if that whole song and dance would have happened for the full season. That's what happened to Bowser. However, though, he did have a great year in 2021 when Rob Ryan was the Ravens' inside linebacker coach. I understand that Bowser is not an inside linebacker. However, the Ravens also run a 3-4, and it's not apples to apples. It's probably apples to oranges. But I also know if Rob Ryan had a good relationship with Bowser, I'm not saying that he does, but there's at least a little bit of a connection there. And if Bowser knows that the Raiders are looking for athletes at the edge/outside linebacker position, could be something to entertain. It would cost the Raiders a late draft pick. I'm saying probably a 6th-round pick, 5th-round pick here, and $5.5 million in cap space. But the other reason why this one makes sense is because they got Owe Adafe, right? He's from Penn State, and they have more edge rushers that they could allocate their money to, which might make Bowser the odd guy out. So if you know that you're not going to be able to retain this guy after 1 year coming off an injury, Wouldn't you try to at least trade him for something right now? Like, when he's been on the field, he's been a reliable player. Like, 2021, 7 sacks, 8 tackles for loss, 59 tackles in general. 2020, the year before that, 3 INTs. He's a good athlete. He's 29 years old. I'd be open to the idea of entertaining this. I also know that the Raiders, they have Robert Spillane. They got Luke Masterson, but their linebacker core in general is weak, right? Like, it's a weak linebacker group overall. And I see a lot of people down there below are saying, no, I don't want him, I'll pass. And you don't have to go out and get this guy. It's just a player to at least consider. Then at the edge position, you got Crosby, you got Malcolm Kuntz. Obviously, you got Tyree Wilson in there as well. But then after that, there's a lot of unknowns. Hell, even Tyree Wilson is a little bit of an unknown. And Janarius Robinson hasn't been cut yet, but I do anticipate that he ends up getting cut for his bonehead DUI that he ended up getting earlier this offseason. The final name is the big one, and this is the one that it's going to get a lot, and I mean a lot of attention. And we had a super chat that came in earlier on our show asking about Trey Lance. Well, guess what? Here you go. Here we can talk about it. According to a source close to us here at Chat Sports, the Dallas Cowboys would be looking for something around a 5th-round pick for Trey Lance. Dallas traded the 4th-rounder last year to go get this guy. And if you remember, the San Francisco 49ers a few years ago, 2021, traded 3 first-round picks, go from 12 all the way up to number 3. The Raiders, if they made this deal, they would have to pay him $5.3 million in 2024. And the fact that he's in the final year of his deal, this could be an intriguing option. I'm saying intriguing. Not in a good way. It's an interesting option where, what if the Raiders miss on free agency? You miss in the draft. Then you have Aiden O'Connell and Trey Lance battle it out to see who's the starting quarterback. I don't love that situation at all. But if we're talking about connections, the Raiders have a clear connection here. And the quarterback coach for the 49ers, the year that they made that decision to go up and trade for Lance, Rich Gangarillo, guess what? He's with the Raiders now. And, you know, I don't think that he's a great quarterback coach. No, nobody, I think, really out there thinks that he's a great quarterback coach. I could be wrong in saying that. But if at one point, because if you're an NFL team like the Niners, and I think the Niners are one of the better run organizations in the NFL, if you disagree with that, you can disagree with it. It's just my opinion. I would have a hard time believing that you would trade up from 12 to 3, give up 3 first-round picks for a quarterback that your quarterback coach didn't love. Does that make sense? So if he loved him at one time, what if he also thinks like, well, he got hurt his rookie year, then Scangarillo leaves, and then 49ers end up moving on from him. Now he's in another position to potentially get him back. Like, if your quarterback coach loves him and you miss on all these other areas, could the Raiders trade for Trey Lance if at all it cost you was a 5th or a 6th-round pick? It's at least an entertaining option. However, the name of the game, what's important? Not putting a Band-Aid on it. Finding an improvement at the quarterback position, which is what every NFL team needs to do. You can't say, oh, Aiden O'Connell's a good friend of mine, let's keep him as a starter. That's not how it works. If you think Trey Lance is better than Aiden O'Connell, then you go out and get your guy in Trey Lance, let them compete. My question to you is, who is the better quarterback? Is it Aiden O'Connell or is it Trey Lance? Like, Aiden's probably the better pocket passer. Trey Lance is probably the better athlete. My question to you, though, is who is the better QB as it stands right now? This might surprise some of you, but I'm going to roll with Aiden O'Connell. I have never been, and I mean never ever, for anybody that's watched the show, I am not proud to say that a player busted because obviously that impacts their lifestyle, but also my job here as a host is I'm not afraid to say, you know what, I'm going to pat myself on the back when I get a take right. If there was one quarterback that I was so far out on was Lance, it was Trey Lance because I didn't like his footwork. I don't like his technique. There wasn't a lot of game tape that you saw on him. So if you were to ask me, Mitch, should the Raiders trade for Trey Lance? My answer to that would be no, I don't want the Raiders to trade for Trey Lance. So let's look at some potential Raiders trade targets based on some buzz that is going on around the NFL Combine right now. You got Kenyon Green, James Bradberry, Patrick Peterson, Brandon Aiyuk, Tyus Bowser, and Trey Lance. Out of those names that you see on screen right now, the name that probably intrigues me the most is Bradberry. The next name is Kenyon Green. All other 4 I don't really see happening here for the Silver and Black. There's going to be a lot of stuff that happens over the weekend. There's going to be a lot of things that end up happening this entire offseason. And I know that not everybody has the ability to watch our live shows, to watch our shows on YouTube as well. But if you still want to get Cliff Notes version of everything going on around this football team, Give me a follow on IG. Give me a follow on Twitter. I'm at Mitchell Renz 365, doing my best each and every day to make sure that you guys know I'm thinking of you, but also to make sure that you know more about the Raiders than all your friends.